really is what social enterprise is about. And so that's essentially what I work on, is understanding who the customers are, how they make decisions about health, how they make choices when free government hospitals are available. Why would they come to another hospital? And I've been doing that for the last 3 years and living in India. My background is actually from the private sector. So I was consulting after undergrad for a few years, completely private sector, and kind of doing volunteering work on the side. And so I started to feel that I had kind of this dual life where I had it wasn't a 9-to-5 job, it was many hours of work, but doing that. But then what I was really passionate about was making a difference. And so I decided to really combine these two things. I went to business school, did a dual degree with MBA and a Master's of International Affairs. During that time, became really inspired by organizations like the Acumen Fund and people who were thinking about really innovative ways to take business tools and really convert that towards a social challenge. I became an Acumen Fund Fellow 4 years ago and was placed at LifeSpring, which is how I got involved. And I'm one of those people, and I guess many of you here are as well, who had always a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan for what my career trajectory would be, and being in India for this long certainly did not fit into that. And I had meant to be a fellow for the 1 year and then come back to New York, where I had already bought an apartment. This was after grad school, accepted a job consulting, basically had my whole life planned out post-fellowship, and got there and just kind of fell in love with the work that I was doing. I found it really energizing and inspiring. And so 4 years later, I'm still there. In terms of advice for people looking to go into social enterprise, there are 3 things that come to mind. One is to really go out there and take the initiative. For people who are students right now, you'll see all of the recruiters coming for banking and consulting and whatever other industry. That's not like that for social enterprise, which I'm sure many of you know. And so it takes a lot of initiative and research to go to events like this and talk to people who inspire you in organizations that they've started, and really find out what that organization needs and offer your skills. Related to that, I would really see what it is that inspires you within social enterprise. So, when I entered the field 5-6 years ago, it was sort of enough to say that you were interested in social enterprise. You sort of got some arched eyebrows and people didn't quite know what you meant, and that in itself was a story. And now that the industry is, I wouldn't say matured, but certainly progressing, people want to know what is your skill. Are you bringing finance to the table, marketing? What is it that you're bringing to the social enterprise? Related to that, at LifeSpring, we have a lot of students as well as career changers come and want to work with us. Kind of the sexy thing is to work on strategy. And so you have a lot of people from business schools coming in and wanting to work on strategy. When, it is really interesting and intellectually stimulating to think about, but quite frankly, what a lot of social enterprises need, and especially places like LifeSpring, is operations and execution, and how do you take this vision and really kind of do something with it. And so that's really the first piece of advice is to take initiative, really prepare, and offer something that's valuable to the organization. Second piece of advice, and this is especially for anyone who's either currently in business school or coming from the private sector, and this was a piece of advice that I got right before going to Rwanda and working with the School of Banking and Finance there. But a mentor who had also gone to business school and was then at the IFC said to me, you're going to go to Africa, and everyone's going to say how great you are because you have this MBA and you come from the private sector. The dangerous thing happens when you start to believe them. And being in India has been an incredibly humbling experience because all of the pretty PowerPoint slides, which was essentially my value add for 3 years after school, really meant very little. when it came to sort of executing on the operational challenges that needed to be done. So I think entering the field with a great degree of humility, understanding what value and skills you bring to the table, but also being very humble and keeping your eyes open, and realizing that these are enterprises that people have been working on and thinking about, and you're not going to just go there and present this new strategic plan to them. And then thirdly, is really just knowing yourself and understanding what it is that energizes you. I could tell you that I'm working incredibly more hours now than I ever did in consulting. And I do it because it's inspiring, and every day working in the hospitals, I see the impact that I'm making. But that's what's energizing to me. And I think that it's a really personal decision to really understand, what it is that energizes you, and to really to know yourself. And so I'll stop there, but I'm happy to answer any questions, Q&A.
Hello, I'm Lakshmi Karan. I'm the Director of Strategy at Riders for Help. I'll tell you more about Riders when I get to the far end of my career, where I am. But I grew up in India, and I'd like to really look at my career so far as three segments. I've actually changed careers many times, so always driven by my passion to do so. I started off with an education in mathematics and went on to get a master's in computer science and computer engineering. And that, it really took me down the traditional path for most Indians who immigrated to the US. I was a computer software programmer. I loved working with computers. I'm an inner geek. And it was very fulfilling. It was a concrete approach to solving problems. You have a particular problem, you apply your skills, you get a solution. And it was a great way for me to see the world as a consultant. So my first job was in consultancy, and that's where I stayed for 10 years. Growing within the sector, I moved into business consulting and strategic consulting. So really kind of learning about how do you help companies put in place technology platforms to advance their business competitive advantage. And in some ways, it was also fulfilling because I got exposed to many industries. I was providing a particular technology skill, but it was spread across finance, retail, marketing, and insurance. So why did I have to switch when things were all looking great and rosy? My mother is a social worker for 4 years in India. She's been running a homeless shelter for destitute women. So I grew up in a household where we volunteered as just part of what we do. We never really saw it as volunteering and then life, but that's just what you did every week. Whether it was reading for the blind, working at the animal shelter, or working with UNICEF in the slums. So I had a early midlife crisis in my late 20s to really think about what do I want to do with the rest of my life, and during some spiritual explorations, I realized I loved what I was doing, which is computers, but I wanted to be more directly engaged in social change. So I did what probably most Indians might do, the Indians here, I'm really generalizing. I decided to go back to school. Because I said, well, I just need an education if I'm going to switch my career. It's just fundamental. So, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I went to do a master's in international relations at Tufts. And the reason I picked that was it had a very broad curriculum, so I could learn about human rights, world trade, economic development, and a whole wide spectrum. And after 2 years, I still really didn't know what issue I wanted to focus on. I mean, I'm a pretty focused person, but just stay with me in this story. And then I started doing something that was more driven by the market's response. A lot of the nonprofits I wanted to work for, to do the kind of work I wanted to do, said, were you in Rwanda? Were you in the Peace Corps? No? Well, sorry, we can't hire you. And I said, I have this professional background. I can offer my professional skills, and at that time that wasn't welcome. So I started doing what was natural for me, which is strategic consulting for the nonprofit sector. So basically doing the same work I was doing, it was just at a much, much lower pay. And that actually was a blessing in disguise because it took me through a lot of different sectors, even within the nonprofit sector. So I worked with Oxfam America, Save the Children, the Reebok Human Rights Program, and moved into philanthropy. And I've been in philanthropy for the last 8 years. Most recently, and I think that's where it brings me into the social entrepreneurship space, I was the Director of Impact Assessment at the Skoll Foundation. The Skoll Foundation is one of the preeminent funders of social entrepreneurship around the world. And when I first joined Skoll, I hadn't heard of social entrepreneurship, it was something new. But my value add there was they were looking for generalists. Skoll really provided core support to help organizations scale, so it really didn't matter whether you knew about health or human rights, you needed to understand the internals of an organization and how do you help them scale. So that was, again, the common theme that Tricia referred to, which was playing on my skills of strategy and organizational growth, living in here. Along the way, again, I went back to school, but this was more from observing, just the work of nonprofits and realizing nonprofits spend a lot of time and energy assessing their work, doing evaluations, but very few of them use it. And so I really wanted to look at how can we enhance organizational learning within the social entrepreneurship space. And I over many, many years, doing it in parallel, got my PhD looking at how nonprofits can improve their evaluations. So where, again, this ties in is, for me personally, learning has been a big part of my career, whether I was in the private sector doing computers or philanthropy, and now, most recently, I've joined a social enterprise. Again, the change came because I wanted to be more directly engaged in social change. And so philanthropy was taking me further away from the field. And of course, was intensely jealous, having seen incredible social entrepreneurs like Gene and organizations like LifeSpring, and wanting to be a part of that movement and didn't want to be in the sidelines. And it was, in some ways people might say, that's a risk. You've given up philanthropy and all of that and moving, again, another pay cut and another move to a high-risk environment. But for me, it was something that I was compelled to do. And you always think you're very young your career, and so I felt it's not too late to switch again into something different. And it's a common thread to what she was saying. Again, my skill at Riders for Health provides last-mile healthcare transportation for any health implementer. We partner with Mothers to Mothers. We partner with Ministries of Health, basically ensuring that people in the last 100 miles get the services when they need it in a timely manner. And my focus as the Director of Global Strategy is how can we advance the work of riders over the next 5 years to ensure that we reach a tipping point on this issue. Again, I'm not a health expert, it's a completely new field for me. We work in health, I have to learn about health. But going back to what I'm good at, which is strategy, which is organizational business models and growth, and what's the value I can bring to an organization. I think just there's one theme that I can reflect upon as you think about your careers. You don't actually have to have the answers when you get out of school. It's worked for me. I've gone with the experiences. I mean, you have to have skills, okay, so develop skills. But it really is, you follow your passion, and it's a very rational path. It wasn't very impulsive at all for me, and you're talking to a lot of people and you realize, I can add value here. Let me go with that and grow within it. And, I keep joking, I don't know what my career will be in my 40s and my 50s and my 60s. And I'm really hoping it'll take me to new places. While at the same time drawing from everything else that I've done in the past. So it wasn't I'm not looking at, I today apply my systems thinking that I learned when I was 20. I today apply how do you work with funders and donors that I learned when